Our next section is talking resiliency with first responders, dealing with stress before it happens. This is a real intriguing and interesting session. So in this session, we've got a retired Navy SEAL who will provide a review of the resiliency training that prepares high-risk professionals and corporations to survive and excel in their chosen professions. You're going to review the 4 pillars of human performance, specifically physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and synthesize them into a comprehensive, resilience-centered, practical, and research-based program. And the discussion will also be facilitated by a first responder with 38 years of experience of surviving real-life experiences. And our 2 speakers are going to highlight the need for resiliency training in a high-risk environment and develop tools to protect the brain before the trauma actually occurs. What a novel idea. So our 2 speakers are Jeffrey Wobbleton, 911-311 Assistant Director for IT and Administration for the City of Alexandria, and Dr. Ed Nazar, Founder, Human Performance Consulting, retired Navy SEAL. It's my pleasure now to turn it over to our next speakers.
Jeff, you're on mute. And you call yourself a 911 operator. You're still on mute. There you go. You're off mute, but cannot hear. Oh, we don't have audio on you, Jeff.
How about that? How's that?
Yeah, there you go. You're good.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. Technology is, you would think after these years, I kind of get used to all the technology, but yeah, no. That brings into account of, been here a while and been doing it in this industry a while. So, why it brings us here today. So I'll just quickly I'm going to turn it over to Ed here in a second. But a couple things I wanted to try to do, and what we wanted to try to do is the thing we call mission-based resilience training. One thing I want to do before we even start off is that, Lieutenant Paul Buttram, Kelsey Sadler, Kenny Lacio from the Baltimore City Fire Department just recently passed away, and we want to pass on our thoughts with them. It really is a tragic incident, and that from 2019 just alone this year is 49 law enforcement officers been killed. So names like Christopher Gibson and Trooper John Sumter, is that those are the real kind of heroes that are out there each and every day. And 39 years, it's taken its toll on me and taken a toll on everybody. But how do you deal with those things? And that's kind of what Ed and I have been talking about is, well, how do you deal with this? And so we took some of his Navy SEAL training and he's developed this training into a resilience-based training that crosses all different sectors. So, one of the things that, what drives you to get you here into resilience, and why do all this? So, I had in October 30th of 2020, a trooper corporal by the name of Ed Totley, my partner, was shot and killed. Is that, do they really train you on how to deal with everyday pressures, and how do you deal with the trauma, and how do you deal with all of the impact that it does? And it's not just the law enforcement; it's everybody. You make these life decisions, and you have a fork in the road sometimes. Is that the fork says, "Hey, are you going to go to the bad side or go to the good side?" And this provides that opportunity to help make those decisions in at that fork in the road of how do you deal with this, instead of going down the wrong pathway of drugs and alcohol, PTSD. Is that how are you going to deal with all this? So that's kind of what we had started off with, and we wanted to make sure that, hey, we provide some ideas about resiliency and training and what can you do, and the biggest thing is, how do you deal with the stuff that's out there today? We invest a lot in technology today, but are we really investing in the people that are doing this each and every day? Is that we've got to take care of our people, and I've seen it, in the 39 years I've seen what happens to people that, you know, haven't planned for these events, that go into them blind, and that, you know, when this traumatic incident happens, is that you're there picking up the pieces, and the pieces end up in death sometimes. And, you know, every 22 minutes someone commits suicide. So how do you give them those tools to make sure that they survive this in the traumatic incident? So without ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ed Najjar. He's a doctor, retired Navy SEAL, retired commander, and he'll give you a little bit more about him. I know he doesn't like talking about himself, but he is he's a good friend, and he's done a lot of training in resiliency, and it's a lot of powerful information. So as we go along, I'll monitor the chat screen to see if there's any questions that have gone. But Ed, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone see the screen, the PowerPoint presentation that I'm sharing?
We can, Ed.
Okay, great. So a little bit of background. I'll tell you what we're going to talk about today is mission-based resilience. And I'm not going to get too into the details about the actual training, just an overview. And I'm going to tell a couple of different stories on the different demographics that I've serviced since I started the company back in way back in 2007. So I'll try to make it as interesting as possible and highlight the different things that I've done to show you that resilience is a topic that actually applies to everyone, from executives in $4 billion, $10 billion companies, all the way down to inmates in the jail addicted to crystal meth and cocaine. So let's start by introducing mission-based resilience. You know, it's a program that I developed, and it's a program that it's a journey into the 4 dimensions of a human being: the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And there really isn't any other dimensions that you can dissect that comprises a human. That's it. So if you can, the concept is, if you can control your 4 dimensions by applying principles of resilience to those 4 dimensions, then you can pretty much face just about anything that's going to be thrown at you. Okay. So for example, in the physical dimension, if you can take care of yourself, if you can eat the right food, if you can get the right amount of sleep, if you can get a decent amount of exercise every day, your immune system is going to be better at coping with the different things that are thrown at it, right? And also it's difficult to talk about one dimension without talking about the other. So the physical dimension will affect the mental and the emotional and the spiritual dimension. Finally, an example from the spiritual dimension is purpose. If you lack purpose in your life, you lack meaning in your life, then you will inevitably affect all the other dimensions, right? So just a quick intro and we'll move through the slides. Here we go. All right, Jeff, you already introduced yourself, right? So I'm gonna skip over, unless anyone has any questions or you want to elaborate more, Jeff.
No, that's me. It's 38, going on 39 years of the first responder world. And thank you to, I know somebody did a shout out there to Rosemary. Thank you for your shout out for the service. We appreciate the acknowledgement. Go ahead, Ed.
All right. So this is me, a little bit about me. You 20 years Navy SEAL. I was always fascinated with what made people tick, with why certain people made it through difficult situations and certain people didn't. And I'll elaborate that on in a few more slides. I have a PhD in IO psychology. I'm also a board certified coach, and my clients are, they vary in incredible dimensions, right? They go from like I said, inmates at the jail, which I'll get into, all the way up to executives in billion-dollar companies, and everywhere in between: police, firefighter, 911 operators, accountants, lawyers, doctors. I've had clients from all different walks of life. All right, so mission-based resilience is, in a nutshell, is you're controlling your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual dimensions. And it sounds fairly simple, and it is, because how do you control something? You have goals, you have execution that's alongside the goals, that points towards the goals, and then you have accountability or a swim buddy that helps you to reach the goals. And it's that simple. I mean, it sounds simple on paper, and it really is simple. The difficult part is the actual execution. And the reason the execution is so difficult is because we're bombarded by all the things that prevent us from eating right, from taking ourselves, from reading better in the mental resilience, from learning new things, being nice to people, emotional resilience, having an actual purpose in our life that's clearly delineated and clearly written down on paper. All the stresses in our life stop us from doing that. So when you can take a course like my course, and which is a 2-day course, and you can actually sit down and we map out all the different missions, and we go through all the things that we need to do in order to control ourselves in the 4 dimensions. When you leave the class, you're inevitably bombarded by the stresses that caused you to take the class in the first place, which causes a challenge, right? It's not impossible, but it's a challenge. And I want to say that resilience is an art that you have to practice every day. You can't wait until an incident happens to you and then you decide, okay, I'm going to be resilient now. That just doesn't work that way. You have to practice it every day, just like you do, like taking care of your body, brushing your teeth. Hopefully everybody brushes their teeth here, flossing, going and doing yearly checkups and stuff like that. Resilience needs to be part of that equation, right? And that's what we do in the class, and that's what we do in the training. We help people to become resilient before an actual incident occurs. We call it pre-traumatic stress inoculation. Instead of post-traumatic stress disorder, we counter it with pre-traumatic stress inoculation. I mean, just to use a metaphor, vaccinations help people to not get sick before they're exposed to a certain virus, right? Same thing with this. You actually develop these tactics, techniques, procedures, these goals to control yourself, and you have as much going forward as you possibly can. And you go ahead, and if you do encounter something in your life, then that obstacle is no longer an obstacle. It's a stepping stone to reach a better position in resilience. Think about the 4 shields that you see in front of you, like the 4 tires on a car. You're the car rolling down the road. Each of these are tires. Each of them have to be aligned. They have to be inflated. They have to be rolling in the same direction in order for you to accomplish your mission in your life. If one of the tires starts to get deflated, whether it's mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual, it drags the others down. And eventually, if you don't take care of that one tire, you have a blowout and the car comes to a screeching halt, and you have to go and take care of that by the things that we have in place in our society. Therapists, maybe you're in the hospital, physical, maybe you let yourself go physically and you broke your leg or something, or you have to go to get an operation because you just let yourself go too much, or maybe you have an emotional breakdown, right? You burnt yourself out at work, and then that one piece, that one tire blows up and it drags everything down with it, and you come to a screeching halt. So the resilience piece is taking those tires and keeping them inflated and working on them and practicing every day in each of the 4 dimensions. All right, so this is a little bit more in detail on the 4 dimensions, what they are roughly. I mean, there's a little bit more than that, but if you were to summarize them in one word, that is what physical resilience is: energy. Mental resilience is your focus. Emotional resilience is your empathy, both for other people and yourself. And also emotional intelligence, with empathy is one of the components of emotional intelligence. And then spiritual resilience is your purpose, or your ultimate mission, what you're going to be where you want to be in 5, 10, 15, 25 years. And again, all the components are interrelated and they're critical. It's not a mission essential, a mission supporting. This is a mission critical. Each of these dimensions are mission critical. You cannot neglect one over the other. And when I'm going to start telling a little bit of stories in a couple of slides, and you'll see, I'll illustrate what I mean by that. Okay, finally, the last and most important component that I want to talk about is cognitive retraining, cognitive restructuring. It's an element of cognitive behavioral therapy that we teach, and it's the only effective way to reduce stress. All the other stress techniques that you've learned in the past, they just don't work, including exercise, including meditation, including all these things that what the normal people think, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? You can't go and do physical exercise? You can't meditate? Yeah, sure, you can. It'll help you to maybe deal with your stress in the moment, diaphragm breathing. Sure, we teach all that stuff, but we also teach that you have to face the stress head on. You have to address the stress. If you don't address the stress, all the physical exercise, all the meditation, all the yoga you're going to do, it's not going to help you. That stress is going to be there waiting for you when you get back, and you're going to have to deal with it. So cognitive retraining is a method that we teach that addresses the stress head on and helps you to deal with it instead of just sweeping it under the rug, where inevitably it'll rear its ugly head in a future event of some kind. All right, so what is resilience? Okay, these are the different definitions of resilience. I won't read them to you. I'll highlight the one that is my favorite is you got to love it when it sucks, because it's going to suck a lot. That's one of the things that it kind of embodies a SEAL mentality, but there's a nugget of information in there that is very important. And the nugget is love it when it sucks. If you love something when it sucks, then it no longer affects you, and it becomes a challenge. It becomes something that you enjoy, that you can look at that thing, whatever it is that causing you stress, and you turn it into something positive, even if it's something as dramatic and drastic as the death of somebody that is very, very near to you. If you can take that application and say, look, okay, this person died, I understand that, but I'm gonna dedicate my life to whatever that person wanted to do, or I'm gonna start a charity. You see it all the time. People that lose people, it changes their life. They turn it into a positive thing. Even something as dramatic as that, as drastic as that, you can look at something like that and you can learn to love it when it sucks. The biggest example of that is Viktor Frankl in the concentration camps, right? Survivor of 4 concentration camps, founder of logotherapy. The guy was incredible. He, in my opinion, is the father of resilience, and he said, if you can find meaning in suffering, then there is no despair. Despair equals suffering minus meaning. So in other words, if you have meaning in any kind of suffering, if you can attach meaning to it, it erases the suffering, it erases the despair that goes along with it. All right. How are we doing on time, Jeff? Do I need to accelerate?
Look good. Everything's good. Like I said, if anybody has any questions, put them over in the chat. We'll try to get to them.
Okay. So the first example is SEAL. Okay, the SEAL teams, how this program originated. I remember being at basic underwater demolition SEAL training, and we started with 144 people. And at the end of 6 months, there were 13 original people that were left. And I was fortunate to be one of those people. Attrition rates usually run high. They usually run between 80 and 90% of the people that start don't make it through training. And, I was looking around and I'm thinking, at the beginning, who's going to make it through this? And of course you look and you see the physical people, you see the ones that are like the King Leonidases, the ones with the spray paint on abs and the ripped muscles. And you think to yourself, that guy is definitely going to make it through. And then the first week of Hell Week, that guy with the spray painted on abs was the first to quit. And I thought to myself, well, it certainly isn't physical. And then the guys that, the ones that would make it through were the ones that had this certain balance about them, that had a balance between the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. They had meaning, they had a purpose. They knew that they had to keep going. They would not stop. They learned from their mistakes, and then they adapted and improvised and then carried on, right? So that's where the program, it kind of planted a seed in me 30 plus years ago, where I was like, well, it's more than just physical. People think that SEALs are just all about physical, but that's not true. That's not true at all. And unfortunately, a bad situation happened about 10 years ago. I retired, and a friend of mine who was also a SEAL, he retired about the same age as I am. And he ended up, he was retired, decorated, and he ended up killing himself because he just lost the meaning in his life. So even a SEAL who has been through all this training, who's been through the hardest selection possible, if you lose meaning in your life, if you lose that spiritual resilience, and of course it cascades into the emotional and the mental, he took his own life, and it was a tragedy. So that's an example of resilience in the SEAL teams. And of course, you have to be resilient to be a SEAL, but a lot of people think it's just physical, but it's a combination of all four. So that's where it germinated. That's where the seed was planted for this program. Then shortly after I retired, I got this contract with drilling rigs in Texas. And it was interesting, fascinating couple of years of my life going out there and training the crews, not in how to drill, because I have no idea how to drill for oil, but teamwork and after action reviews and helping them to improve their teamwork. So high risk environments, that was my specialty. So I went out to drilling rigs, brought this program there. And an interesting story for that was there was a gentleman, and he was much older than me. He was at the time he was in his late 50s, early 60s. He was an expert. He said, I know your program, you've got the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. I have to tell you that I just never sleep. I was like, oh, great. You never sleep. That's awesome. And, being a scientist by trade, I was like, well, there's got to be, maybe he's an outlier. Ended up, he was actually responsible for a very dangerous piece of equipment on the rig. And the next day I came in, and they put him aside, and turns out that he drank coffee nonstop. And when he stopped drinking coffee, he immediately fell asleep, putting the people at danger on the drilling rig. So they literally fired him off the rig. So had he understood the principles of resilience, he would have avoided that. And luckily he didn't kill anybody, because when we left the rig, there were some accidents that happened, and I believe that if they were to apply the fundamental principles of resilience, then they would definitely reduce the risk of injury and possible death. About 4 years ago, the local sheriff asked me if I would bring my resilience program to inmates, and of course the worst possible inmates, the ones that were addicted to crystal meth and cocaine and heroin and opiates of all types. And so I decided reluctantly, because I talked to my wife, and she's like, "You're going to go inside the jail?" I said, "Yeah, I'll have fun. I'll have a person in there who's the gentleman over there on the left in the picture, and a great friend of mine, and I'll have him to protect me." So it worked out great. We did what turned out to be a pilot class, ended up being 14 classes later. We're still going strong, and we're on the brink of potentially getting a grant to take this program to 18 surrounding counties. So you may see us on the national scale pretty soon. But the program is an 8-week program, and it's designed to help these individuals find a balance between the physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual dimensions. It's something revolutionary that they've never been exposed to. And the important thing about this program is it was one of the first times we could actually measure the effectiveness of the program. And we actually reduced recidivism rates by 50%, because in the demographics that this demographic, the recidivism rate was close to 100%. So we reduced it by 50%, and we've had some huge successes, and it's been an incredible program, and we're very proud of it. And last but not least, this program does apply to corporations. It's including some of the people at the top levels, like some of the people that have successfully navigated their way to the top executives. In my experience, a lot of them lack a sense of, okay, I've made it financially, and I'm certainly well respected. But if they don't have meaning in their life, and that's the very important thing, then again, that meaning, that spiritual resilience piece can cascade into other areas in their life, including physical and mental and emotional. So and also, quite honestly, some executives just don't take care of themselves physically. So that's another piece that can be worked on. And of course, the mental piece is burnout and treating others and treating themselves with respect. So there's definitely a place for a program like this at the corporate level, and we've seen successes implementing it in various corporations. All right, some funny anecdotes about resilience, fear, false events appearing real. It pays to be a winner. That's taken directly from SEAL training, right? Second place in combat is not an option. The only easy day was yesterday, right? So the future is going to only get harder and harder. So you got to prepare and got to be ready and resilient to face it, right? This is one of my favorites. If you never fail, you will never know what it is like to truly succeed. People who never fail, they don't push themselves hard enough. You have to push yourself to failure and then learn from that failure and then come back and bounce forward into a better position than you did before you failed. You're not finished if you lose, you're finished if you quit. Self-explanatory. All right, so here's my call to action. All of you that want to get more resilient, that want to change their life, that think that they are in a place where they maybe not desperate, but maybe close to desperation or close to a place where you think you're overwhelmed by the stresses in your life, this is the program for you. But I will say this program isn't easy. It's difficult. It takes a lot of dedication. It takes work. It takes day to day relentless application of the principles that you learn. You can't just read a self-help book and expect this program to work. It just doesn't work that way. You have to constantly apply the mission-based resilience principles in the 4 dimensions of your life: the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And with that, I'd like to take questions. Feel free to, I don't know if
so
they
Ed, we'll,
come off and ask questions or not.
we're going to tag team this a little bit. Is that, one of them is that, everybody now today is the big word is the word COVID, and the stressors of COVID that are currently out there today. Is that, yes, it's a big, huge stressor. And one of the questions that we had is that the pandemic has played havoc on the whole nation, so much uncertainty and fear. How would you suggest coping when so many variables completely out of individuals' control? So, as we talk about stress and how to control these things, is that, we talk about stressors. It could be, you talked about death and people, but the pandemic has caused that. So, what are some of the things that we could do to use to help control?
That's a great question. The pandemic, the pandemic has wreaked havoc, and there's certain things that we can't control. And it quite possibly, there's a lot of things that we can't control in our life. There's a lot of things, people get infected, people dying, but what we can control, and this is 100%, you can control your reaction to those things. That is the one thing that you can control. And that takes practice, and it takes will. It takes looking at the facts. It takes not, if something is affecting you, like for example, social media, if you get stressed out by by going on social media, don't go on social media. If you get stressed out by listening to the news, don't listen to the news. You know, do something else. There's a lot. I mean, I'd have to work with individuals on an individual case by case basis, but there are techniques that you can use. I mean, those are the basic ones. You can't control. You can't control. Don't focus on the things that you can't control. Focus on your reaction. That you.
So another question I had is that, you know, today's society, we have, you know, all kinds of different people, different jobs, different everything. Is that, does this impact everybody? Is this training for everybody? Or is this a certain group that, hey, yeah, look, it only impacts a certain group? Is like with COVID, it impacts everybody. Could everybody benefit from this? And how do you incorporate that into your daily life?
Yeah, 100%. There's no doubt about it that this training helps everyone, from the drug addict, the person that doesn't even have a high school degree. I mean, I've taught people that face to face in the jail with people that don't even have a high school diploma, all the way up to PhDs, people that have master's degrees at the executive level, and everywhere in between. Pest control specialists, 911 operators, firefighters, SWAT teams, Navy dive school students, military, everywhere in between. This program is a human program. It teaches you how to be more resilient at the human level. It doesn't matter. I've even taught it to kids in church, in school, in the youth center. I've taught this class to little kids. So it's something that is a basic thing. And when you learn the concepts, you'll see that it's nothing that's anything new. It's nothing revolutionary. Everybody's always looking for that catchphrase thing that's going to help them to, oh, this is what I need to do, and all I need to do is read this one line and it's going to change my life. No, this is something that you have to apply day by day. But what we teach you is how to do it. There's a methodology on how to do this program, and how to lay out your missions, and there's all these different things that we do, like personal creeds, personal after action reviews, personal SWOT analysis. I mean, it's a very rich program, and I couldn't, you know, it would take me, you know, it would take me days to explain it all. But suffice it to say that it does apply to everyone, 100%, without a doubt.
Thanks, Ed. You know, I'm gonna jump to this next question, and I'm gonna tell a little bit of an analogy here. Is, will this program work in the EOC, an Emergency Operations Center? Absolutely. One of the things I met Ed probably 10, 15 years ago, and, you know, I just wish that I had these tools available for me for the 2 shootings I was in, and then my partner getting shot and killed. Is that, hey, having these tools instead of, okay, just pull your britches up, let's keep moving and let's go, is that, you know, we got to provide everybody those tools to how to cope with these things. So in emergency operations centers and 911 and 311, if you've ever sat and listened to a 911 call, it's just as bad as, you know, watching it in person as you see a shootout happening in front of you. It's very traumatic. It's very hyper focused as you go through the scenario, and then on the other side of it is, as you're coming down off of that high, it's a crash. It truly is that you're the sleepless nights, and it's a big huge crash coming down there. So again, the EOC operation 911 centers, it's prevalent in all that. Is that will this program work in the EOC? Absolutely. We've got to give everybody those tools on how are we doing things. The operation centers are all about planning. How do you plan for the event? And that's what this is. It's planning. You're planning for dealing with the coronavirus. We've been dealing with this for 2 years, and every week, Monday and Wednesday, we're going over the plans. We're planning what it is, but it's for the virus. So what do we need to also do is we need to plan for the person that's doing all the planning and behind it. Because without that person sitting there and helping do the plan, we have nothing. So again, does it have a play in the whole EOC? Absolutely, it does. And even in the workday life, I mean, I'll tell another quick story is that, my son is now a pilot in the Army, and he had to go through a SEER school. It's one of those schools that nobody really talks about, but Ed's been through the whole thing. So I took him down there and said, hey, here you go, how do you get through and how do you manage these? How would you manage? Because I saw him getting wound up a little bit. So helping build and how do you deal with these things, help them get through the school. So hopefully that answered that one. Next question is, what resilience training would you put in developing a CERT trainings? How much effort into mental fortitude would you anticipate develop among civilians? So that's that whole search and rescue teams and what do you think about that?
Search and rescue teams like the SWAT teams and stuff like that, the special response teams.
SWAT teams, and you live down in Florida. Is it matter of fact, he lives right in that Panhandle area when the tornado, the big hurricane came through. Is that how did you deal with that whole thing?
One day at a time we dealt with it, but the question is for special response teams, like if you could develop a program like this for special response teams.
Yes.
Yeah, I do. I train the local SWAT team in resilience. That's what I do. I do that every month. We have another curriculum called Leading with Resilience. So we put them through this curriculum, which is a self-leadership program, mission-based resilience program. And then there's another program called Leading with Resilience, which is actually teaches people how to lead with resilience, right? So we teach the SWAT team that, but I'm not sure if I understand the question other than does it apply to a SWAT team, which it does. So Jeff, did you, I don't even see, I can't.
Yeah. So I'm going to piggyback on what you're talking about is how much effort into mental fortitude should you anticipate developing among civilians? So civilians that are sent down into harm's way is the same thing that Ed was talking about, is that if there's a major disaster somewhere and that these individuals are going to be spending long hours working, and they're going to be working in the harsh conditions to where they're sleeping in tents or cots, or they may not have any drinking water or food, or they have to pack their own things in, and that because almost everybody is used to going to places where they're habitable. They could go to a restaurant somewhere and get something to eat, but those long days and long hours, and I've seen tragedy. So some of these larger catastrophes, such as the collapse of a building or 9/11, there's a lot of death and destruction and a lot of dead bodies and a lot of mangled parts and a lot of stuff that you can't get rid of. And so this was what, on the flip side of what happens is that everybody trains on CISM, or the CISM acronym is basically after the fact of they send these individuals in to check on you, making sure you're okay. This training here is all built around, hey, before you deploy downrange or before you go somewhere, that's what this training is all about, is to build that when you have to go in or you see something, or how do you mentally, you're continually going down range and you may have some terrible situations to get into, and is that, hey, you can't stop. You still have a job that you still have to do. So how do you take that next step past that? Okay, you've done the body removal or whatever stressors in front of you. How do you take that and take that first step past it? And how do you take the next step past it? So go ahead, Ed.
The body can only take a certain amount of stress. Okay. The human being can only take a certain amount of stress, and then you go into what is called exhaustion. It's just, you can take, and then you fall off the edge. That's why sometimes you see people, they have a nervous breakdown over the stupidest, slightest thing that pushes them over the edge, right? And you're like, how did that person blow up over that one little thing? Well, it's because there's all these other hidden things in the stress bucket that are accumulating, and then that one little thing, it overflows, and then that's it, they're done, right? So this program, whether it's a CERT team, whether it's being bullied at school, whatever it is, it helps you to deal with the stresses that in that bucket, and the bucket can take more, and you empty the bucket, and then you can take more. Empty the bucket. People that can't take it, they don't know how to empty the bucket, and the bucket increases, and then it overflows, and then they're done, right? So this is a self-leadership program that helps you to not only deal with the stresses that you can see with cognitive retraining, but also the stresses that you can't see, the stresses that are inside of you, the stresses of inadequacy inside of you, the stresses of the delta between where you are and where you want to be, and what other people want you to be. And is that important, right? And your background, your childhood, we uncover all of these things. And to address the question about the bullying, the social bullying, a lot of people think that, and this goes for a lot of things, that they think that in order for you to act, you need to feel a certain way. And that's not true. It's the other way around. Action makes you feel. Action will help you to feel a certain way. So if you sit around and wait to feel a certain way in order to act, my suggestion is to act, and then you're going to feel that feeling. People have it backwards. They think that they need to wait for some motivational thing to start something, whereas if they go out and they start something and they do something, whatever that something is, it doesn't have to be physical. It can be, in the case of the social bullying, maybe going out and making new friends, or going out and volunteering something, and that feeling will dissipate. That feeling of being bullied it may not even matter anymore, because you've changed your purpose in your life, and you're doing something that has meaning, that has different implications than the bullying.
Yeah, I just want to
again, one of those questions
about this.
It's specific. I'd have to talk to the person specifically to help them through that problem. It's just not something that it's a very individual thing.
Yeah. And on the CERT teams, in the as they go downrange, is that preparatory work is that most of the training that happens is that, okay, you've got a boat, or you've got a farm or radio, or whatever you're preparing to do, is that you have something physical in front of you. You've got something that you can touch and play with, and that hey, I need to train on the handling of a boat, and how to maneuver in swift water training, put the helmet on, and the vest, and throw the rope, and all of those things. That's a physical piece of, hey, I could touch and feel, and all the other things. Is that sometimes we need to make sure that we work on that piece of the mental resiliency of, hey, I'm getting ready to go into a dramatic situation, or how do we mentally prepare ourselves? And Ed Clark, he said that, hey, the Navy SEAL training does this and helps prepare for this. Is that before we go into any kind of situation, is that how do we prepare for the what we're going into? Is that instead of touching this, is that you have the mental side of things. So hopefully that clears up that the CERT training and the mental fortitude. Not only do we have to worry about practicing or training with the tools that we have, or we're going to take into the situation, it's what are we going to mentally do? How are we going to mentally prepare ourselves going into that? So, Ed, you got anything else on that one? I got one more question.
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. Has this program been implemented with DoD for SEAL, Green Beret, or paratroop? If so, what success failure rate has been found?
So has this program been implemented in the special forces? Is that
Correct. Yeah, Green Berets, and yeah. Have you found any success
Oh.
rates, or is there any kind of?
I will say this, this particular program has not been implemented. However, there is a peer-reviewed article that I can share on self-leadership programs, which this is a self-leadership program. And that did have a significant impact on the selection, the actual success rate of the program. It was, I can't remember exactly. I have it in my references. I can share it with you if you like. It's an actual peer-reviewed article on self-leadership programs, which mission-based resilience is one of those self-leadership programs. But I will say this anecdotally, you know, I mentioned when I first started the presentation that, you know, we had 144 people and then 13 people graduated, you know, original people in my BUDS class. We did not have any program like this. It was just the school of hard knocks. The people that made it through were the people that made it through, and the people that didn't, well, so be it. You know, they didn't make it through, right? So had we had a program like this, and we anecdotally, every once in a while, we'd have an instructor who was threw us a bone and through some of the elements of resilience, like for example, compartmentalization, you know, everybody's heard about that, hopefully, about stress, you know, not looking at the whole picture, looking at the little chunks so that you can manage the chunks and not be overwhelmed by that. They would throw little nuggets like that out there. And I suspect that had we had a program like this, then our attrition rates would have been less than they were. But again, that's my opinion. It doesn't hold water in the scientific community. But the article that I dug up will hold water because it's an actual peer-reviewed article and it's an actual research study that was done on self-leadership programs specifically for the special forces.
All right,
Jeff, Ed,
okay.
this is George Jange. I have a question for Ed or for Jeff. You know, oftentimes when people interview personnel for jobs, they look at their education, their experience, their communication skills, you know, the typical. How does one gauge the ability of the candidate to deal with an immediate high stress incident? Is he going to fold? Is he going to panic? Are there characteristics or traits that one could see in talking to someone that they really have the foundation to be successful in that type of a high stress environment, whether it's firefighting or whether it's, you know, something like a SWAT team member, how they respond in these types of incidents? Is there something that stands out that one should be looking for?
The brick test.
Yeah, exactly, Ed.
So what I do with the inmates, I'll share my trade secret with all of you. You know, what I do with the inmates to measure whether or not they're going to be good for the program, which George, I think that it's kind of along the same lines as what you're talking about, is that I put them in the push-up position in the plank. And I'm not sure if you can do this on a you know, a job interview. You might have like some issues legal, but I put him in the push-up position and I have a rubber brick in front of him. And I say, what are the 100 things you can do with that brick? So it is a little bit of stress involved. And usually I have a megaphone to have a little bit more stress. And then if they're creative and they're very articulate in what they're going to do with the brick and they just start rattling stuff off, I know that they have the capacity to perform under stress and to be creative and look at it, not be too intimidated, not be too scared, not be kind of flow with it and tell me. And some of them, quite frankly, they just look at me like they have no idea. They completely go blank. So those are the individuals that, you know, are not going to really perform well under stress. So. I don't know if that answers that question.
Yeah, it does. You know, anecdotally, Ed, I've always heard stories. I don't know if you all have heard of Admiral Hyman Rickover.
I have, yeah, I've heard of him.
Prior to anybody going into the Navy nuclear power program, he insisted on interviewing every candidate. Yeah. And typically the question is when they come into his office, he looks at the Navy corpsman or ensign, and he'd say, "You've got 5 minutes to completely upset me. You have to really piss me off." And the clock is ticking. And these guys are like, I don't know what this guy, I don't want to upset the admiral, but it's that kind of a thing. How do they deal with that high stress situation is remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah.
That brick analogy is a funny one. Is that, you know, I go back and, you know, I like to tell these analogies and stories as Ed and I have come along here. Is that when we were doing one of the 911 centers of training, it was an interesting thing to watch. Is that we had one of the 911 dispatchers, and it was unbeknownst to anybody in the room, is that on the other end, one of the law enforcement officers that was in the training actually was involved in a police involved shooting, and that was the dispatcher. So they actually got to speak, and neither one of them knew beforehand, but they came to, it was almost a closure, as you saw with them. It was almost like a closure of a story that they were both telling in their heads. Is that how did they survive these things? And so it was kind of interesting to watch as you know, as the training, as it clicked in of, okay, this is what the training is all about. But at the same time, here's the real life story of these two individuals, and right in front of us, it kind of comes together and says, okay, here, we were both involved in this incident. One was involved on one and one was involved on the other end. And it was kind of interesting to watch and see them share their stories. So it truly is a tool that, along with the boats and the radios and everything else that you need to do, is that, okay, how are you training yourself mentally to get into this incident? And using the 4 pillars, you got to make sure you're taking care of those 4 pillars before you walk into this, these day-to-day events or incidents, and that, hey, this is a common everyday tool that you can use in everyday life. And it doesn't have to be for the Navy SEALs. It's, you know, like Ed said, it's for the workers up on the steel plants, or electrical, or running a nuclear power plant, or the corrections. That's a measurable thing that we're measuring right now, is that, you know, 50% of those people that would come back are not coming back. And, you know, that's a great, huge success story, is that, you know, you're giving them those tools. It's either, okay, you're going to throw them in there, you're going to lock them up, and nobody really cares about them. But now you're giving them the tools to say, hey, when you get back out, is that here's the tools. Here's what you have to deal with, you know, the next time somebody says, hey, crystal meth. No. Hey, look, I'm at that fork in the road, I'm taking the right road and not the wrong road. So it gives you all of those tools that you need. So anybody else have any questions on, I'll be quiet for a second, see if anybody else has anything. And then the last answer online is, I was just typing it up to provide the written response. But yes, we'd love to, you know, work with all the CERT teams and the EOCs and those individuals that are, you know, they're basically risking their lives to head down to, you know, harm's way. And, you know, I was talking to Ed during his story. It's quite amazing what happened down there in Florida. So. Ed, you got any closing remarks?
No, other than it's an honor to be here, honor to talk to everyone. I really appreciate the invite, and I'm hoping to meet people and help people in the future. That's what we're all about. So.
Thank you so much for this important information. George, last words from you?
No, actually, I'm just going to thank our speakers, Ed and Jeff. Practical advice to, you know, that applies to a lot of stressors in life, especially whether it's, you know, COVID or putting out fires. It's great advice, and certainly an interesting topic that we don't really hear much about. So appreciate you sharing that information with all of us.
Yeah, it just real quickly in a nutshell, I've been thinking about this. You know, it just boils down to this: if you can focus on the things that you can control, right? And if you can't control the things, then focus on your ability to react to the things, because that is 100% within your control. Because it's normal. If you feel out of control, then the stress goes up. You know, control and stress are like inversely proportional. High control, low stress. Low control, high stress. It's a teeter-totter. So you want to control as much as of the things that you can in your life, as much as you can, because that will reduce your stress. And if that means staying off of social media and not listening to the news, then so be it. If it's bad enough, somebody will call you and tell you what's going on. Believe me, I know, because I never watch the news, and people are calling me and telling me, "Oh, you think we're going to invade Russia?" Well, tell me about it. I don't need to watch it 24/7 on the news. You're going to tell me, so tell me.
You're absolutely right, Ed. And in fact, if you can get success in dealing with an audience like inmates who have little or no hope in the next few years of their life incarcerated, obviously it speaks to to how important this program is. So thanks both of you for your service and for your sharing of information with the group.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you again, Laura.